following program was recorded at the ARC Annual Industry Forum in Orlando, Florida. I'm pleased to welcome Adrian Gonzalez, Director, Logistics Viewpoints of ARC Advisory Group.
Hello, I'm here with Jim O'Brien, Supply Chain Consultant. We're going to be talking today about how to maximize the value of 3PL customer relationships. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Jim, you kind of had the unique experience of having worked at both 3PLs and a variety of different manufacturing companies. So you've been both part of a 3PL and a customer. What do you see as some of the biggest challenges or obstacles in maximizing the value of 3PL relationships?
The biggest obstacles are primarily trust and culture. If you think about manufacturing companies or providers that have integrated companies that they've acquired, a partnership between a 3PL and their customer is an integration. You're trying to put together in trust and culture two companies that are very, very different, that have different missions and goals, and trust and culture is probably the biggest because you're trying to absorb two cultures into one. The other piece that is very, very significant is that the goals are basically diametrically opposed. One is to seek the lowest cost base possible, and the other is to maximize profit, top line revenue, and operating income.
So it sounds like trust and culture are the two things you kind of highlighted. So that kind of implies that from a trust standpoint, that's something that obviously has to build over time as part of the relationship. And the culture piece, would you recommend perhaps as part of when a customer is evaluating different 3PLs to at least try to get or select a 3PL provider or outsourced logistics provider that has, at least on the surface, a similar type of culture as yours? Well, if you're in lean, let's say lean-oriented organization, look for a 3PL that might have lean as part of their culture as well?
No, I think that's essential in developing the relationship, and that is another obstacle, is the relationship. The relationship has to be developed in order to get that trust and that oneness in the company culture. So yes, as part of the interview process, as part of the walkthrough of the organization, you need to feel that they have the same type of culture as you do.
Now, how do you overcome these challenges? I mean, what are some of the things that 3PLs and customers can do to overcome some of these challenges?
I think the biggest thing that has to happen is communication. I mean, communication is the foundation of trust. It's the foundation of culture. What happens in many companies is you have great communication, but it's electronic. Okay, you need to have an active 3PL presence in the company that's being supplied the service or the product. If they're not active at the executive level, if they're not demonstrating leadership, they're not going to be accepted, and that relationship isn't going to develop, and that culture isn't going to spread throughout the organization.
So I would think that communication is not just communication of day-to-day operational things, but also communication from a more tactical or strategic standpoint in terms of the customer providing visibility and then having conversations with the 3PL around their strategy and what some of their longer-term objectives, and likewise having the 3PLs communicate perhaps on a more proactive basis, how they might be able to participate or positively impact that strategy.
I think so, and I think it has to be at the leadership level. And where I've seen the failures, having been on both sides, is that the 3PL needs a seat at the table on the executive team of the company that is purchasing the service. They need to understand that strategy. What happens is the strategy of the 3PL is communicated to the folks that execute their mission of the 3PL strategy, but the strategy of the company is not communicated. What are the goals? What are the objectives? What are we trying to accomplish? And what is our vision of what supply chain is? I think that, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, is what you have to get to is a virtual vertical integration.
So what do you mean by that? Let's get to that now. What do you mean by virtual integration?
One of the other things that is getting a lot of talk about today besides performance-based outsourcing is vertical integration. There's a move for many companies to take over that so they have the reliability, they have the service, they have control of the operation. So in order to be a great provider, you have to provide a virtual vertical integration. You have to make yourself part of that company. And again, from the leadership level all the way down, it needs to be known to the tactical level of the execution within the DC or within the supply chain, if it's a supply chain collaboration service, something like that.
Now that implies that the customer has to be willing to, engage in that
Absolutely.
type of integration.
I mean, these performance-based outsourcing will not work unless both sides are willing to come to the table and bear all.
Right.
There has to be complete transparency. We talk about transparency, we talk about collaboration. It has to be complete and throughout, and we have to be able to drive to the same goals. And without bearing all ugly warts and everything, we're not going to get there.
Now you mentioned performance-based outsourcing, and certainly others are calling it vested outsourcing. Growing interest in that, growing buzz in that out in the marketplace. What do you think that's so?
I think that where performance-based outsourcing can be successful is in the companies that have achieved best practice or leader status in best practice in supply chain or in technology, at manufacturing. You have to be at the top. And why is it becoming? We're trying to find a way to get to the next level. What is the next level? And performance-based outsourcing of aligning these goals and missions of the company may be the way to do it. And I think with a common culture and a common team-based, lean kind of thinking, this can be done.
Now you mentioned lean as well. Do you see any parallels between performance-based outsourcing and lean, invested outsourcing and lean? Do you think this has the potential to do what lean did to manufacturing for performance-based outsourcing, invested outsourcing, to have kind of a similar impact when it comes to outsourcing relationships?
I think that lean is a tool, and every situation is different. Depending on the situation, that tool can be applied. Performance-based outsourcing can follow the path of lean with the same amounts of successes and failures. Companies that weren't prepared to implement lean have as many failure stories about the implementation of lean and Six Sigma as we do success stories. So yes, I do believe there's a parallel, but you have to be ready as a company to move forward.
Great. Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate your thoughts and insights on this topic of how to maximize the value of 3PL customer relationships. We've been talking with Jim O'Brien, supply chain consultant. Thank you very much.